Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome all members and guests to the March 4th, 2025 Public Hearing Committee meeting and remind everyone that our meetings are web streamed and televised. So if you could please ensure your phones are on silent, that would be appreciated. I will now call the March 4th, 2025 Public Hearing Committee meeting to order, and all members of council, with the exception of Councillor Michele, who sends his regrets, are present today. Councillor Huffman is attending virtually, and Councillor Berry is not present, so that is an error on my part. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest today? All right, seeing none, I would look for a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented, please. Moved by Councillor Brunton, seconded by Councillor Columbus. All in favor? Carried. I now officially open public meetings held under the Municipal Act, the Planning Act, and County Policy. Please be advised that under the Ontario Planning Act, as amended by the province, only specified persons and public bodies as defined in the Planning Act may appeal a decision of Norfolk County to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Third parties or anyone who is not a specified person or public body do not have the right to appeal a decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. However, to preserve the ability to be a party to any appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal, third parties or general members of the public are required to make or provide written submissions. These meetings are to allow oral and written comments as input to a decision on specific development applications at a later date. And the first item is 4.1, 76 Culver Street. Over to Mr. Wallace.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The application is seeking a zoning bylaw amendment to allow for the construction of a new mixed-use building with up to 2 commercial units and 22 residential units. We can go to the second slide when you have it ready. Right. If we can go to the second, there we go, that's great, thank you. The subject lands are approximately 740 square meters in area and located within the CBD zone downtown designation of Simcoe. The site fronts onto Culver Street and is surrounded by buildings in commercial use. The site has an existing 2-story building in mixed commercial and residential use. Next slide, please. As shown in the mapping, the site is fully within the urban center of Simcoe and is located opposite the Brick and nearby the municipal parking lot at Argyle and Culver Streets. The presence of residential accommodation at ground floor level is permitted in the downtown OP designation, and the proposal would meet the majority of the zoning provisions for the CBD zone in terms of lot coverage, setbacks, uses, and building heights. Next slide, please. The application is seeking a zoning bylaw amendment to increase the permitted ground floor residential occupancy. The zoning provisions allow for up to 50% ground floor residential accommodation, provided it's contained to the back of the building, with commercial facing the front. This application would increase the residential occupancy to approximately 75% of the ground floor, reducing the commercial floor space to approximately 25% of the ground floor area. These numbers will get specified prior to a recommendation report coming back to council. Several studies and reports were submitted in support of this application, including a traffic impact brief, a stormwater management brief, and a functional servicing report. No technical comments were received opposing this proposal. Housing did raise concerns with using the broad term of affordable unit without confirmation of the proposed rents or submission of a CMHC investment requirement with respect to capped rents. It would be premature to refer to these units as affordable, and this would not result in an extension to the community housing system at this time. And no public comments have been received relating to this file. Sorry, I guess we're 2 slides ahead now. Thank you. Regardless, it would add much needed rental housing in a sustainable location in the center of Simcoe. At least 4 of the units would be wheelchair accessible, although the submitted internal layout is only an indicative layout at this stage and open to change up till the site plan application has been determined. And the last slide, please. Given this, staff recommend that report CD 25013 for development application ZNPL 2024-139 be received for information, and that any comments received as part of the statutory public meeting will be considered in the future recommendation report. Thank you for your time, and I'm here for any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Wallace. Are there questions? Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Wallace, this property is 0.1 acre in size, which is less than a quarter acre for sure. And I thought I read somewhere here where they spoke about a stormwater pond requirement. Is that still in the cards here?
I don't believe there's a stormwater pond
No.
requirement as part of this application.
Okay, what was it that was with respect to stormwater?
Through the mayor, there was a requirement for a stormwater management plan. And I believe that's more what we're looking at, because as far as I'm aware, they'll be able to use the municipal stormwater systems.
Okay, thank you. And has there been any environmental issues with the subject property that would need a cleanup or anything?
Through the mayor, not to my knowledge. It was a sort of convenience store with an apartment above, and I'm unfamiliar with what it was prior to sort of its current form.
Thank you for that then.
Councillor Huffman.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to note that on the staff report in that second to last slide, the term affordable housing was used again. And I think that we should delete any mention of it being affordable housing. It is not, as it was mentioned by the housing comments on the report. So if we could delete that term affordable housing on that second to last slide, and if not, replace it with market rent, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Brunton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The same paragraph I read that and highlighted it about the housing, correct me or bring me up to date. Did we pass something some time back about rent geared to income when we deal with these things, that we wanted these types of developments to provide some of that? Or it's not mandatory, I take, because obviously he's not doing that, right? So can you answer that question for me? Do we have something in our official plan, or what was that we passed a while back about rent geared to income or subsidized housing?
Through the mayor, I'm not actually sure about that. Sorry, did you want to come in, Heidi? Okay, thank you. Yeah. Pass over to Heidi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Councillor Brunton. The community has a 10-year housing and homelessness plan, and there are recommendations and targets contained within that when we see private rental housing development, we certainly encourage the inclusion of affordable rents. But as noted in the report, from a community housing perspective, the term affordable has a very specific definition.
Okay, well, I do recall that now that you mention it, but I guess it's not really fair to the developer to be able to tell us the rents when he doesn't know what it's going to cost to build it yet. So anyways, thank you for your comment.
Councillor Van Passen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I read those comments as well, and I think we need to separate, I think this proposal, the developer is trying to create something that has lower rents and things like that, and they're smaller units, and there's actually some accessible units on the ground floor. And you got to recognize the difference between the use of affordable housing, common usage in the common English language, as opposed to a very defined term that we have in our housing and homelessness plan. And I think you can identify the difference, but there's nothing wrong with saying that they're trying to build something that's more affordable by getting the density in there and doing all those things. But that's not the same definition that we give it under the Act and under the rules that we work with. So, let's try to get some stuff in the downtown that is more affordable, whether it falls under our umbrella as rent geared to income or subsidized or all those things, or whether it's just a private entrepreneur who's trying to do something that's good for the community. So there is a difference.
Councillor Duthie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I also read the same comments, and I think what I read is we just don't know yet what the intention is. It's been signaled by the developer, but to staff, two questions. I understand obviously it is in the Central Business District zone, so therefore parking isn't required. That said, 22 units potentially could require some, or will bring with it some additional cars. So is there any comment, well, I understand it's not required, as to where those vehicles may go, should there be some, because it's already at a premium in downtown Simcoe?
Through the mayor, the simple answer would be no, because the zoning provision allows for nil parking. So in that sense, the research sort of stops there. They don't have to provide it, therefore that's that. I think part of what we're looking at in terms of the official plan and zoning updates is to look a little bit more clearly at that in terms of the urban area sort of future development strategies that our project lead is working on, where we'll perhaps dive into some of these specifics a bit more. That, okay, you have an entirely residential development or largely residential in the CBD, it needs parking, as opposed to the blanket we currently have of CBD, no parking required. It's of benefit, and certainly most sort of condo type developments have provided parking. It tends to be the rental side that doesn't. Because people are expecting, if they're paying several $100,000 for a condo, they're going to be able to park. Whereas for the rental, it's not required. So unfortunately, the answer is no. We've not really looked at where they would park, because it's not a requirement on either the municipality or the developer under the current legislation.
Thank you. And regarding the height, what's currently on the property? Is it a two-story?
Through the chair, yes, it's a two-story with a pitched roof, and it's just going up to 3 stories with a pitch.
And where would that put sort of the slope with neighboring buildings? The Army and Navy would be on one side, and I don't remember what's on the other.
Army and Navy, I think, just single story, and then the one to the north is 2 stories, I think. It would put it just above that, above the, so the actual eaves, I think, would be above the building to the north. But not in such a way that it would necessarily be disruptive in the street scene. It would,
and
again, they're allowed up to 6 stories in the CBD. So.
And there's no comments from neighboring property owners?
No, we've had no comments from the public at all.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Is there anyone here in council chambers who wishes to speak to this report? Mr. Bunting? Sure.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My partners and I are very excited about this opportunity to bring affordable housing to Norfolk County. And yes, we do understand the definition of affordable housing. We do want our property to have rent control, and we're hoping that CMHC can work with us to provide this for our community. We are very excited to provide 22 apartments and potentially 2 commercial units to the neighborhood. I believe 4 of the units we're looking at are going to be barrier-free, which I feel is a need for our community. We are looking at possibly adding an elevator to our building for more accessibility as well to the different floors. So, yeah, we are looking to work with Norfolk County for grants for the property as well. We started that process and excited to, work through that process. So if there's any questions that I can answer, I'm here and willing.
That's great. Councillor Columbus?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Sam, Councillor Duthie has raised the question, parking, like 22 units, there's obviously somebody's going to require some parking. Your thoughts on how that could be achieved?
Yeah, we initially had parking concerns as well. Obviously, with the zoning, there was no requirement for parking. So we looked at taking advantage of that. We also talked to a traffic study engineer to essentially look at how that would affect traffic control in the area, and I believe it was commented on in that report. From what I can tell, there is a reasonable amount of parking kind of within that initial frontage and down side streets. And again, majority of the parking I feel would be necessary, maybe overnight parking. And then we're hoping that people would leave to go to their jobs during the day. The other thought is to, if we have transportation in Norfolk County, we're hoping that potentially 50% of our occupants may not even have a vehicle or may have a bicycle or something to that nature.
Thank you.
Any other questions? My only question is about the height. Is there a reason why you decided on 3 instead of 6 or 3 instead of 4?
Good question. Because of we've actually spent a lot of time discussing whether we wanted to go to 3, 4 stories. I think because of the parking restriction, at that point we kind of said, you know what, we need to be responsible and limit, how many occupants we have in the building. We did consider actually the 4 stories, but it'd add another 8 apartments and, more congestion. So that was the thought. Also, at the start, there was just thoughts around the construction of the building and how it relates to the building code. For Part 9 as compared to Part 3, I believe.
Okay, I would hope if it was building code related that our staff would be able to work with the developer to encourage more housing, especially in the downtown Simcoe area where their foot traffic is needed. I would hope that wouldn't be your only, impediment to adding some more density there. But if that's your preference, then you've got my support. But if you have any problems, please let us know, because I wouldn't want to see the building code giving you a hard time as the only reason why you didn't investigate additional height and density. Final call on any other questions? Okay, thanks for coming and answering some of that for us.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone on the line that wishes to speak to this file? Any final call on anyone in the room? Okay, I would look to council then for the staff recommendation that staff report CD 25013 for development application ZNPL 2024-139 be received for information, and that any comments received as part of the statutory public meeting be taken into consideration as part of a recommendation in a future staff report. Moved by Councillor Duthie, seconded by Councillor Van Passen. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn at 3:18 p.m. Councillor Huffman moves, seconded by Councillor Duthie. All in favor? That's carried. And I would just like the record to reflect that Councillor Berry is in attendance today. Thanks.